Inscryption is an indie card-building escape-the-room game that has been deservingly praised for its game mechanics and story. Recently, however, I was watching a YouTube video made by EpicGamerDan where he mentioned how a single moment can define an entire game experience, and how people can walk away from playing a game with a handful of essential small moments. But when talking about games, we often default to conversations about game mechanics or storyline. So it's a mistake for conversations about games not to include a focus on these quintessential moments. And I fully agree. So given that canvas, I want to make this video about the moments that sold me on Inscryption. I'll also mention here that the moments that sold me on the game are very near the end, so if you want to experience Inscryption without any spoilers, you should stop watching this video now. The moments that sold me on Inscryption are just after you defeated P03's third chapter of the game and stopped the Great Transcendence. Afterwards, one of the scribes, Gamora, begins the process of completely deleting the contents of the Inscryption floppy disk that contains the world you've been experiencing. This sets off what is, for the digital characters that have gained sentience and self-awareness, the end of the world. This isn't like previous end-of-the-world situations where either the scribes themselves restart in a new world or the new cycle of games begin. This is the end of the fundamental fabrics of their reality and identity. When I try to make a real-world comparison to this, I often think of Eastern religious traditions like Hinduism or Buddhism. Whether it's the eternal cycle of samsara or the karmic patterns of reincarnation, in these traditions a normal death leads into another cycle of life. However, in both traditions, you can escape these cycles of samsara or reincarnation. In this situation for the scribes in the Inscryption game, the circumstances are forced on them, and not something of a result of a spiritual journey. They are, whether they like it or not, going to die, and there is no resetting or renewal or anything that they will ever know again. In particular, the reactions and dialogue you have with the character known as Leshy and how they contrast with the character of Magnificus were significant for me and were the two moments that sold me on Inscryption. Leshy was the original protagonist of the game when you first start playing. He was a psychopathic and unstable serial killer who trapped you in a cabin and forced you to play his twisted games, seemingly enjoying watching you pull out your own teeth or gorge out your own eyes just to survive. You would think with all that, and that in these final moments I would experience satisfaction from watching him be deleted. But his responses instead made me sympathize with him. In his final moments, what does Leshy want to do? He wants to do exactly what he's been doing, playing a card game. There is no desperation or sense of dread in Leshy's tone or demeanor. Oftentimes, games get portrayed as a form of escapism, or a way of trying to distract the mind away from our own finitude. While I agree that this can be the case, Leshy shows how games can also simultaneously be a celebration of life. How games can just as easily be the thing that we are forced into and torment us, as they can be the things that we enjoy most about life. In the end, the score of the game itself doesn't even matter for Leshy. Win or lose, he simply wants to play one last game and shake the hand of his opponent. In contrast, soon after your last moments with Leshy are finished, you talk and play with the scribe Magnificus while his world is being deleted. Unlike Leshy, he is optimistic about how much time he has left and hopes that the player might remove the floppy disk and spare him from being deleted. Instead of a state of acceptance of his own ultimate death, Magnificus is in a state of denial and in his last moments pleads futilely, saying that he isn't ready to go. Ultimately, because his end is sooner than he anticipated, he doesn't even get his last wish of shaking the opponent's hand. The reason these moments sold me on Inscryption was because I could easily relate to how I sometimes react or perceive to my own death. Sometimes I'm feeling like Magnificus, judging my own time to be large enough that I eventually get to do all the things I want, and how this sometimes hides a sense of fear about when I'll eventually end. Other times, I'm a little closer to Leshy. I won't go into the details about my personal life, but I've had some medical history that really made me appreciate and realize the things I valued most in my own life. Whether in this respect I'm more of a Leshy or a Magnificus, it was these moments with the scribes that turned Inscryption from a game that was good to a game that was unforgettably amazing. And that's it for this video. I want to thank you all for listening to my experience with the game Inscryption and encourage you all to share with me what made the game great for you. Also, if you like this video, let me know. Until then, I'll catch you later.